a couple of my professions, most people look at as just, and whether it be an easy thing or a joyous thing, I'm a touring musician, and I'm a fly fishing guide and instructor. And most people just think, oh, you get to fish all the time, or, oh, you get to go play shows and go to all these cool places at the time. And, the thought never really crosses other people's mind about the other 23 hours out of the day, or the months of preparation that it takes, for tours or for this and that. In the guiding business, the fishing, that's the easy part, everything that goes into it to ensure that people and their lives are safe on my boats, that, everyone, we are all legal, and, permits are covered, and trailers are maintained, and motors are maintained, and the gear is stocked, and all of that. That's where the real work comes in. Very similar to playing a show, when we're on stage, that's the easy part. It's everything that has to happen, that when it's time to take that stage, everyone is prepared. All the gear works. You've made it there alive. You have a place to stay that night, everything else that goes into it.
It sounds like from your experiences now that maybe there's less downside to the fishing side of things for you at this point in your life. Is that fair to say?
I mean, it's, the upside to it to me is, it's independent. It's more or less, guiding is simply hired skilled labor. It's very similar to being an independent contractor, right? I used to do a lot of finish carpentry. I used to work a lot in the trades, and, when I look at guiding, and compare it to other jobs that I had, it's very similar to, being an independent contractor who worked with other people or homeowners, and I had my truck of tools, and I had my skills and my expertise, and like I would go source materials, source, hardware and whatnot, and look at their ideas or collaborate with them on their ideas, and then materialize something, build something from an idea. And in working with people, that line of work is very similar to guiding, because you're showing up, you're trying to give a great impression, and then, leave a great finished product, give them a great experience, and hope they call you back, or that they spread the word and one of their friends or family members calls you to book them or to book themselves. Right. So it's very similar in the sense that there is very, very little, there's little to no security in it. Again, much like being a musician, if you want security, you have to build it. You have to make it. You have to, set money aside for it. You just have to go get it.
There are a lot of contributing factors, but one of them in music specifically is things ebbing and flowing, and people's excitement towards a specific project. Is guiding similar in that, you've noticed that there are times when it's, I guess that you're just more in demand?
Yeah. I mean, I've built enough of a name for myself in this community, and kind of in the community of fishing, where I'm very fortunate to have people that fly. This is a destination area. a lot of folks fly from all over the country to come experience some of these fisheries and to check out, what we do here and to come fish with me. And it's a blessing. I definitely, there's certain times a year where the fishing can be better, than other times. But for the most part, the way that I run my outfit and my programs here, I've shaped it to become a year round endeavor. There's, if I didn't want it to be, there would be no off season. The only time there is any type of off season is when we get, a major, atmospheric river event, or we get what I call just kind of the double whammy of storms. And just to give you a point of reference, we live not far from Lake Tahoe, but we're in the right. So, and we're surrounded by rivers. We're actually below the snow line. So where I live, it gets all four seasons. It may snow here a handful of times throughout the winter, but only sticks around for a handful of days at most. But, you drive 45 minutes up the road and you're chest deep in it, you're right, in Lake Tahoe. Well, there's certain times a year where we may get a heavy, heavy, heavy snowstorm, the hill in Lake Tahoe, where I'm talking about where they get, I don't know, 8, 9 feet, 10 feet of snow, in a week, followed by high elevation, warm rain front. Right. And when that happens, then you kind of get that double whammy when that rain comes at a higher elevation. Not only are you getting all the water, coming down the creeks and into the rivers and into the reservoirs from the rain, but it's melting off all that brand new snow. And that's where we get these crazy events where everything will, as we say, blow out. Right. And that's about the only time that, the guide business can shut down for a little bit, but for the most part, the way I operate, I work out, I have 3 boats that kind of open up doors to take people to experience all different fisheries around our area. So there are places that I can take them where even when all the rivers blow out, I can still work and I can still host trips.
All of the elements that make it a really good place for that can occasionally work in such a way that it's kind of ends up being a little bit rougher.
Sure. Yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of a blessing and a curse, honestly, because at the same time, all that water is what makes this place so special. Those big storms, they'll flush the rivers, right? They'll, clean algae. They'll, replenish, the rivers in a way. So, yeah, I mean, it's just all part of Mama Nature's cycle,
What came first, you're moving to the area or you're becoming a guide?
Moving to the area for sure. But honestly, even when I started, guiding, I had realized like I've been taking friends fishing for many years, and, more often than not, I would take friends fishing and I would bring them to the spot or I would have the gear or I would show them what we were doing. It wasn't until I started guiding where I just thought, oh man, this is in a way kind of what I've been doing. I just haven't thought about how to turn it into, a business. And,
music is like that for a lot of people yeah. Just doing it for pure enjoyment. But I wonder, like, this is something that I go back and forth on myself, in terms of making something that you love your job. Does that spoil it a little bit? I mean, do you still fish in your off time?
Yeah, this is such a good topic and a great point. Because it is a slippery slope, right? And I mean, I think the dream is for everyone is, find something that you love to do and learn how to make a living doing it. I mean, that's a wonderful thing to have, and to strive for. But it does dampen it in some ways, I think, I mean, when I come home from tour, I'm not sitting around playing guitar all the time. I mean, if, and then is in terms of, fishing, the funny thing about guiding is as soon as you start guiding, even though I'm out there all the time, I'm in the boat, I'm amongst it, I have my finger on the pulse, but um, I don't get to fish that much, not like I used to. Um, but I'm okay with it, I mean, like I get just as much joy, um, you know, running the boat, positioning the boat. In a way, I am fishing. I'm just fishing through. I'm channeling through
Like through a surrogate?
say, So I mean, I still get a lot from it, and I get so much joy, um, seeing people find success and the excitement that they find, or taking them to some of these places, that they would never see otherwise, or taking them to some of these places, turning youth on to these awesome experiences, and watching kids, just see this cycle of life, that a lot of us who do this all the time take for granted at times. We're always out there. We're seeing, the rise and the fall of the rivers. We're around ospreys and bald eagles, and seeing the migratory patterns of fish and everything. And it's just part of our life. It's what we do. And, every once in a while, I'll get folks, not just kids, all ages of people from all over the place who are seeing it for the first time. And just the excitement that people get from it I mean, it does a lot for me, for sure.
I'm just kind of curious, in terms of like the places that you've lived, and obviously when starting off in a music career, there's value in moving to like a city, moving to a place that gives you that access.
Yeah. I mean, I personally have never been, real attracted to live in a city. Um, even, you know, even when I did move to a city, I mean, when the band was based in Gainesville, Florida, um, I even left Gainesville, got too big, you know, and I moved out of Gainesville to a tiny, tiny little town. I wasn't even in the town. I was just out in the country. But, I was out in the country outside of Micanopy, Florida, where the population was 320. And, that's more my speed. And then kind of fast forward, some years later, and I fell in love with a California girl, and, she happened to live in probably my least favorite city on the planet. And so I moved to Los Angeles for a little bit, uh, for love, and, the funny thing is, though, is right when I got there, the first, I don't know, 6 months, year, my wife did show me like a side to this city that, I can see why people can go there and live there, um, and I can also see why some people have to stay there at times, you know, um, some people are there because they want to be, and some people, uh, and I'm speaking of friends that I know and coworkers, some people get stuck there, in a way, where they're just hand to mouth, and, yeah, I mean, but for me, it wasn't long. I wasn't there long. And my wife, she didn't really want to stay there either. But we started looking at places, very similar to where we ended up, up here in the foothills. And this is way more my speed. I spend plenty of time in big cities already. So, I don't need to go home to one.
It's a fair point. I mean, that's again one of the benefits of a job that allows you to travel is you get to not even play tourist, but you get to just experience these cities for a little bit of time and then go back to your bed.
Sure.
When you say Gainesville got too big for you, what did you mean by that?
I mean, it. I don't know. There was. I mean, I do know. When I was there, it feels like a lifetime ago. But I was in another relationship that went south. It just, it's a very small town. Any yeah, anywhere you went, like you knew people and whatnot. And I don't know. There was just something that drew me to the woods and out to the marsh and to the swamp and the ocean, right? And I just didn't want to be in a town, any. I don't think it had anything to do with Gainesville itself. Like Gainesville's it's a great place to be, but looking back on it, I was very much in need of clarity. I was in need of solitude, and it was just too much town for my life.
You alluded to a little bit earlier, we were talking about, this dream that people have, that a lot of people have of making a living doing music. I assume there was a point, although I'm always surprised when I ask people this question, but was there a point in your life when you were able to just do music and that was what kept you going?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I could do that now, but to me, the way the industry is and the way that us as players and writers sustain and get paid to do it properly, to pay for everything that I need to pay for, living in an expensive state, having a family, having a lot of different responsibilities and obligations to really do it properly, I would just need to be gone all the time. That's just what it's become, and that's tough. It's tough on a family. It's tough. It's tough on me. I think it's probably tougher on the family though, but
obviously those are two major ways that having a kid specifically changes the math, in terms of just being more concerned about financial security, but in order to get more financial security, that would require you to miss a lot of really important moments of his life, it sounds like.
A lot. Yeah.
When did you start working as a guide?
Oh, I believe it was 2015. Yeah. Yeah. That I, that I got licensed and insured and whatnot. Maybe 2014. I would have to look on the records, but it was right I think it was right before my son was born. Yeah. So, and he was born in 2015. So
I ask because obviously the pandemic, really changed things for a lot of touring musicians, but it sounds like I'm sure there was a period of time where, even being outdoors on a boat was an issue, but you were able to navigate that period probably better than a lot of other musicians because you had this entire other career.
Not at first. That I had, just like everybody else, right when everything dropped out. We had a big year. Looking back on it, we had a big year planned as far as shows went. And over the course of what I do remember, because I remember having everything written out in front of me, because the first 2-3 weeks, it was just constant emails and calls of either tours getting canceled or postponed, guide trips getting canceled or postponed. And over the course of a few weeks, I, saw 78 shows come off the books. And if I remember right, about 38 guide trips, So that was a big chunk of it. And at first, I was pulling my hair out like everybody else, kind of uncertain how we were going to keep the lights on, and pay mortgage and get through any of it. And, I spent a couple weeks really, really stressed and losing my mind. And at the same time, I look down and I have this just fired up, excited, happy 5-year-old just looking at me like, what are we doing? And it occurred to me that never in my life have I ever slowed down that much. And most likely, never in my life will I ever slow down that much again until I'm physically or mentally incapable of working anymore. And as soon as I kind of realized that and just slowed down enough to realize that this was my window to do something that most working dads don't get a chance to do, the whole world opened up. And me and my wife and our dogs, like, man, we just started living it up. And to be honest, and I mean, we were hiking, we were fishing, we were out in the outdoors. And I mean, our life, compared to probably a lot of folks, in more populated areas, our life didn't change a ton, other than we just weren't going out to eat as much. That was about the only I mean, when we're home, we go to 2 different grocery stores, we go to about 3 different gas stations, the post office. Every once in a while, go out to see a movie, or get ice cream or something, but none of that, so other than going to the grocery store and the gas station that much, like, our life didn't, you know, our life didn't change much. But I look back on that whole pandemic experience and, man, it was, once I got over the hump, it was, I wouldn't change it for the world. It was the coolest thing that I could have ever experienced with my son.
When you say once you got over the hump, are you, because I experienced this too, do you have difficulty slowing down?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm just not wired that way. And, my wife always tells me that I can't help it, but to, as she says, fill the space, right? You know, like as soon as I complete something or get over something, I just add, add another form of chaos to,
Yeah.
and just keep, add on another project or another this or that. But, and I don't know why. I mean, I guess I'm just wired that way, but, yeah, yeah, yeah. I find it extremely difficult to slow down, but, um, I guess it took being forced to recognize the importance of it.
Certainly I can understand that you weren't slowing down on the music side of things and just how like all encompassing touring specifically is, but it's funny from my perspective to think about always being busy being a fly fishing guy, because it seems like it's all space. It's a lot of silence. It seems like you do have that time to decompress, and you do have that really kind of like meditative period that you probably certainly don't get on tour.
Yeah, well, maybe when you're fishing by yourself, but, um, the guide business is in a lot of ways, it's, it can be busy. It can be hectic. It's a lot of running, a lot of, if I stick to my routine and my schedule, and when I'm talking about my schedule, I'm talking about an annual schedule. There's certain times a year where I maintain all these hubs and these trailers and the boats, the motors, restock all the gear, re-up on all the insurance and the permits and the licenses. And at the same time, just keep everything organized around the house to where it all runs smooth. And if I stick to that program, then when the time comes where the trips are just back to back, where I'm coming home, parking one boat, plugging that in, cleaning that boat, parking that boat, resetting to hook up a different boat to get out the next morning on a different body of water for a different species. If I prepare properly, then everything rolls smooth. If I miss those marks, whenever that is, that's when, there's just countless late nights, or, those 3 a.m. mornings where you're grinding, trying to fix something or rewire a trailer. Or granted, I mean, those things happen throughout the year. I mean, you use tools enough, they will break, they will fail, and everything needs maintenance, right? But if I stick to that program, everything rolls smoother, for sure. But the type of fishing I do, I guess it's not necessarily your where the river runs through it, not really your grandpappy's fly fishing. Uh, we go pretty hard. Some of this stuff is pretty aggressive, and um, you know, it's, if if the fly fishing, you're talking about is, like Brad Pitt and where the river runs through it,
Yeah.
that would be, more like, figure skating compared to what we do, which would be more like hockey, if that makes any sense.
Conceptually it does, but what does it mean to go hard in fishing?
Yeah. A lot of the stuff that that I'm doing the majority of the time of year, we're chasing striper, striped bass on the fly. And, these are saltwater fish that are in a freshwater system.
They're spawning. Is that?
Well, we have a mix of migratory and resident fish, right? So, for years, striper. Well, I'll back up. Striper were introduced into the state of California 100 and I don't even at this point 146 years ago. Brought over in aquarium carts on train, right back, and they were introduced. They brought over fish from the East Coast, from around Chesapeake Bay, and brought them over and introduced them into the bays inland from San Francisco, right? And the initial introduction wasn't too many. It was 166 fish or something like that. And, they were they were a valued food source. Back in the 1800s, people were already, they were highly regarded for both as a food source and as recreation, right? And they looked at San Francisco Bay and the California Delta, the estuary, and looked at it as very similar to how it was on the East Coast, and figured they might do okay over here, and they have. They've done exceptionally well, and they've coexisted with a lot of the indigenous migratory species, such as king salmon and steelhead and American shad. Well, sorry, shad were brought over later as well. But anyhow, you asked what going hard is. So we chase striper. It's one of my biggest passions in angling that I do. And we're fishing for them in rivers more often than not. And some of these rivers have heavy currents. These fish, they grow substantially out here. We're looking for all sizes of them. But in my mind, what I am chasing are the, 30, 40 pounders, right? And these fish on a fly rod, there's not much like it, and you catch a fish like that in current, right? And it's taxing, it's humbling, it's a beautiful experience. It can be really challenging, but doing what we do and where we do it, it's extremely hard on motors. It's hard on gear. It's hard on the body. The way that we cast and strip for these fish. And when they're chewing, they're extremely aggressive animals. Yeah. So, I don't know. It reminds me of skateboarding. It's just, rough and rugged, and
I was reading some writing you were doing on a site around some of your songs, and you said that you're talking about hot water music specifically, and you said that it's been more of a vehicle for healing and overcoming obstacles than just about being in a band. And I don't know, is there a way in which being a guide serves a similar role for you?
100%. To me, and I don't know how much of the guiding aspect it does, although I love sharing, as we were talking about before. I love sharing these experiences and sharing these places with people. I was taught things all throughout my days, and still am, from people that I admire and, that I've mentored under. And there's definitely a teaching aspect of it that that I get a lot from, but I think the majority of it just simply comes from being in the outdoors, right? Um, it's something that has been a part of my family since some of my earliest memories. Um, on all sides, like everyone in the family fished or hunted and or grew food, whether they were male or female. It was just what everybody did, and sure, we did it a little bit as recreation, but I mean, for the most part, it wasn't any different than sitting in the shade. It was just what we did. And uh, I think I think a lot of the healing, that we're talking about, that I've gotten from music, I feel is it's no different to me, than like being in the outdoors has truly is will always be. That's my church, that's just where I, find the most peace.
You grew up in a religious household, though. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a way in which, I mean, obviously for most people, there's a distinction between religion and spirituality, but you feel like music and fishing play or fill that role for you. That thing that people are looking for when they look towards religion.
I do 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I feel lucky that I found that at a pretty early age, and it didn't come easy. It came at a time when I was extremely lost and confused and scared and angry. Um, and I did have people, my both parents, authorities all around me telling me that I was going the wrong way, that I was the wrong way, believing the wrong way. And I had many times had like all my freedoms completely stripped of me. And was more or less, left to figure it out on my own. And so I put something together for myself, based on, the guidance from other people who had gone through tough times, and other people who had, you know, been to dark places or dark, in dark thoughts. And I put together or discovered, whatever you want to call it, realized, discovered, saw, you know, a spirituality that opened my eyes and made all the sense in the world to me, you know, and I was sure that this is what it was that would help me find peace and to quiet my mind and whatnot. And it seemed like as soon as I became stout in my realization, I had everyone around me say, "No, that's the wrong way. That's still not right." Um, but it stuck and it hasn't changed, since.
Obviously, it's hard to a certain extent to talk about this stuff and not talk about it in like a very abstract way. But what was it that you found? And when you talk about that process of putting it together, what does putting it together look like?
Sure. I mean, what I found is that it's funny because what I'm about to say, I'm sure people who believe, in in whatever it is they believe in within any organized religion could somewhat relate to it in the way and just attach their, you know, own blueprint to it, I guess. But in my in my realization, I mean, I just found that we are a small piece of the puzzle, right? We are a part of a cycle. And I don't think I would ever serve myself believing that I am any more than just a part of the puzzle, that I am not better than anyone else. I am not over anyone else. I'm just a piece of this cycle of life and death, you know, and I will be here uh, for a very, very short period of time. And it's my duty to serve people around me that I love. It's my duty to um, instill as much kindness into this world as I can, and not feed the beast of negativity. You know, I real I realize that hatred breeds hatred, and it doesn't matter what side you're on. You know, even if you are fighting a good fight, it's not serving anyone having hate in your heart.
I certainly understand how just being in nature puts things into perspective, and certainly, makes it clear how things are cyclical. What role, though, did punk or as a community or as an ethos play on the formation of your personal philosophy?
Sure. I think a lot of it was, realizing the freedom in it, the freedom of expression in it. Um, finding people early on that showed us that playing music didn't have to be about making money or seeing your name on a marquee or fame or finding girls or whatnot. It could be used as a form of therapy. I when I was young, and I mean, I was a dropout, or I guess got kicked out, and I went through, I mean, it's a whole other long story, but, I ended up basically in an alternative high school, and I had oh, hang on one second, Brian. Hey, but I'm in an interview right now. Okay. I'll be in there in a moment. All right. I was in this alternative high school in, Sarasota, Florida, called New Directions. And I had a creative writing teacher who, at this time, this was around the time where I would just put this kind of, as we were talking about, this realizations together, this spirituality together in my own mind. And I believe that I never needed to do anything like this. Is like I never needed to explain it to anybody, that it was no one's business but my own, right? And but I was still trying to kind of figure out a path, or just figure out a reason for existing, I guess you could say. And I still had a lot of anger in me. I still had a lot of angst and confusion. and I was in this creative class, and this wonderful teacher had us do all these different exercises, right? And one that stuck with me that was so cool was she had us just get on a blank piece of paper and write down, whatever it was that came to our mind. And she said it can absolutely be anything that you wouldn't want anyone to read. This is your deepest, darkest feelings, emotion, whatever. And she said, just write it out until you feel you've gotten it all out, and then take it outside and burn it. And it was beautiful. It was awesome. And it's something that I would recommend everyone do, you know. It was something else. And, she taught us a lot of cool exercises like that. And right around that same time was when, I was really kind of getting more and more drawn to playing music and looking at music as a tool, looking at songwriting, somehow kind of all these journals. Because back then, this is before cell phones. This is before having laptops, pen pals and postcards and keeping a journal, like all that was very much, a huge part of our lives and my life. And, I just found, this connection with all this journal writing, and poetry and whatnot. And then it kind of merged with playing music. And then music all of a sudden became simply a tool for therapy. Right. And, I mean, that to me is where, because I'd already kind of grew up with punk, and I found that through skateboarding. And when I found not just punk, but I'll call it alternative music of sorts, I mean, everything from rap and metal. But I mean, I grew up in a household, so everything was wild that I was listening, as far as folks were concerned, you know. But there was already this kind of rebellion there. There was this like sense of, freedom in these bands that I was discovering and these lyrics that I was discovering. And then when it kind of merged with like this, I don't know what we would call it, therapeutic writing of sorts. That's when, songwriting to me, or even just playing music, became a very crucial part of releasing everything that I needed to release, in discovering, whatever it was that I had to overcome, and really realizing how to overcome these obstacles. It was done through just, connecting with the friends and family around me that were like-minded in that music, and just self-realization.